Okay, I am weak. I can be weak, and sometimes it shows. I enjoy Star Wars movies and the franchise like the next person, but I'm not a huge fan of them. I've never considered dressing up like one of the characters and going to a convention and learning all the lines by heart and stuff like that. I enjoyed the movies, I enjoyed the franchise. If a game comes out with that theme, that per se is not enough to make me think, ooh, I need to play that game. So when Star Wars Imperial Assault was announced and people started talking about it, I was excited about it, but not because it was Star Wars things per se. Because I heard it was a game of tactical combat, I like that. It had a strong theme, I like that. And I thought maybe I'll pick it up, maybe not. There's just so many things that, of course, one would want to purchase and play. But there was so much, I wouldn't say peer pressure about this game, I would say peer influence. A lot of gamers that I knew and that I respect and that usually have similar taste seem to be very excited about this game. So I thought, what the heck, I'll give it a try. What the heck, I'll pick up a copy. It's almost Christmas, so I went to my friendly local game store. I picked up a copy, thinking I'll wrap it up, I'll put it under the tree. Christmas morning, I'll pretend it's a big surprise. I say, oh my gosh, wife, how did you know I wanted to play this game? Incidentally, I'm filming this on December 24th, so you know that actually I didn't resist until the morning of Christmas Day. I already opened it and played it, but I did pick up a copy. I brought it home, which took some effort because it's a big, heavy box, and I played it. Star Wars Imperial Assault, a game about Star Wars tactical combat, can be played in one or two modes, campaign game or skirmish mode. Let me show you how the game works. The game can be played in a skirmish mode, in which you set up the board and then you have two parties that are going to fight against each other, trying to hurt each other, defend against each other, and perform certain actions on the board depending on the skirmish scenario. The other mode is the campaign scenario, in which you play multiple missions that are interlocked narratively into a broader story. Both modes, however, are then resolved in a tactical form. This is at the core is a tactical game in which characters activate miniatures on a board and they move them around and perform actions. The board is built using these tiles here that interlock. There is a healthy amount of double-sided tiles. Here I've set up a skirmish mission to give you a sense of what the board may look like at the beginning of a game, but definitely you can create a lot of different scenarios using those tiles. So there are a lot of missions that can be played thanks to the material that you find in this box, and you can also create your own scenarios using the tiles that you find here. But both the skirmish mode and the campaign mode revolve around the same core of rules, so I'm going to talk about those rules now. Characters are represented on the board by miniatures, such as this one. I don't know if this guy looks familiar. Ever seen him? I don't know. He does look familiar. Rings a bell. Each character is represented by a miniature on the board and by a card. The skirmish game and the campaign game use slightly different cards, but they both convey the same general concepts. In the skirmish game, you form your party spending points, so you can create different parties, different combinations of characters. And important stats are health, yes, you guessed it, when you receive enough amount damage points to reach your health maximum, then the character is incapacitated. Speed is the number of squares by which a character can move, and then you have defense and attack. Defense is the dice that the character rolls in defense, attack the number of dice that are rolled when attacking. There's also a symbol here that tells you if the character is attacking in melee or with a ranged weapon, like in this case. And each character has a number of special abilities, special actions, special effects that may be triggered by die results. It really much depends on each character. It's one of those games where the core rules are very lean, very economic pretty much, but then there's a plethora of effects that are triggered by special circumstances. General idea, when it is your turn, you activate one of your characters, then the other opponent activates one of theirs, and you go back and forth until all characters have been activated. When you activate a character, you can perform 2 actions with that character. The 2 main actions are to move, and then you move up to your maximum movement allowance. You can move diagonally or orthogonally. You can move through other figures, but you cannot end movement in the same space as another miniature. So you can move as one of your actions up to your full movement allowance with some restrictions based on terrain. You can attack, and that's of course always one of the main things. You can interact with the setting, with items on the setting, spending actions to do that. You may trigger special effects that your character has and that are described on the card, and that require actions to be spent in order to activate that effect. In the campaign game, you can also rest, which means you can remove fatigue from your character. You may also be able to remove damage points. Yes, there are 2 types of damage that your character will have to take. One is fatigue. It is less severe than physical damage. Sometimes you will inflict fatigue on your own character to activate some special abilities that the character has. And then there's also damage, which simply means hits, wounds that your character takes, and that is bad. However, if you have received a number of fatigue points, which is equal to your endurance, then you cannot receive any further endurance. You will have to take hits instead if there are game effects that would give you more fatigue. In the skirmish game, you also use these cards here, which will allow you to perform special actions. You receive a hand of cards at the beginning of the game, then during the game you receive new cards. You can simply spend a card by playing it, and then you resolve the effect described on the card. This is something that's a little bit of unpredictability and some extra wrinkles to the skirmish game. Now, attacking, this is what everybody's always excited about. Attacking is super simple. You can have a range attack or a melee attack. For range attack, you need to have a line of sight, and you also need to take into account the distance between the attacker and the target. Suppose that that dude here is attacking this big, hairy fellow. Now you look at the card of the attacking figure and you grab the corresponding dice. You have a nice pool of customized dice here. In this case we have a blue and a green, and you simply roll the dice. Hooray! The number of these symbols here is the number of hits that you inflict on the opponent. The lightning bolts are surges. You use the surges to activate possible extra effects on the character. For example, when this character receives a surge, that surge can be spent to use this effect or this effect, which means the surge can count as an extra hit, or it can count as 2 extra points in accuracy. This pretty much means range, which means when you are resolving a range attack, you also look at the numbers. So here we have 1 and 3 is 4. That number must be equal to or higher than the distance between the firing character and the target. In this case, we have a 4. The distance is 1, 2, 3. So that's fine. We already have it. Suppose that the character was far from the opponent, needed an extra boost, then that surge could have been spent to increase the range by 2. If you have the most amazing hits but you do not have enough range, then your range attack is a miss. The opponent, when attacked, also rolls dice for defense. This character here has a black die as a defense. This symbol is subtracted, the number of these symbols that you have on the result is subtracted from the number of hits. Here we have 3 hits, suppose 4 because this character chose to use the surge as a hit, so it's 4 hits. Minus 1, that is 3 hits on this character. If this had been the result, then the result would have been hits minus 2. There are also other possible symbols, such as this one. This means that the character can annul a surge effect. And there's also another symbol which does not appear on black defense dice, only white dice. It is this one. It is the dodge, great symbol, because it simply means that the entire attack, no matter how powerful it was, misses. That's it. That's how you resolve attacks. When hits are inflicted on the opponent receives the corresponding amount of damage points, which you can place on a miniature, you can place on the card of the character or by the card of the character. Range attacks, that's how they're resolved. Melee attacks, they're resolved in the same way. Suppose now this guy is really mad, he's attacking back. Again, you look at the dice, you roll the attack dice for the attacker, the defense dice for the defender. In this case, that would be a black die, and you compare the results. And when you are resolving a melee attack, you do not have to worry about range because, well, there's not anything to worry about range. You're already in range. It's a melee attack. In this case, 3 hits minus 3 defense symbols. That's bad. It simply means that the target managed to effectively defend against the attack. The game has 4 manuals, and I think there is a very good organization of information here, above average in Fantasy Flight manuals or simply in game manuals. You have a very lean set of rules to learn to play. Read this first. Which teaches you the basic ideas and concepts of the game and the concepts that apply to both modes in the game, both the skirmish and the campaign. It leaves out a lot of the specifics, I would say really most, if not all of the specific effects, which is great. You don't really need to know those or to memorize those before you start playing the game, because maybe you learn all those special effects and then you're playing with cards that do not use those effects. So what's the point? Once you're done reading this, you can start with the skirmish guide, which tells you the different rules that you have, some changes from the campaign game, and maybe some new extra rules to add flavor to the game. In particular, how you create your own forces, how you spend points, how you determine initiative, how you form your deck of cards, how you select the skirmish to play, and so on and so forth. Then you have the rules reference guide. Actually, let's talk about that later. The campaign guide, I can't really show you too much. I don't want to give you spoilers. If you want to play the campaign game, then learning the missions, well, discovering the missions, seeing how a mission leads to another, unlocks another, leads to side missions, that's part of the fun. Exploring the universe of this game is definitely going to be a big part of the fun. You have a log in the end. At the end of the book, you will probably want to photocopy this one instead of just writing on the book, which you use to keep track of the progression of your missions. That's it. I can't really tell you too much about this. And then you have the rules reference guide, which I like very much. I really like this. I think we need more of these things. What is this? It's, if you want, a dictionary, an A to Z description of A to X description of the effects, organized here in the index by alphabetical order. So you want to know what a blast is, you want to know what a cleave is, what it means to interact, to reach, to pierce, to do what's a unique effect, what's the threat level, etc., etc. It is more than a player aid, because a player aid usually just reminds you of things that are in other manuals too, but there are things in this manual that are not anywhere else. But why is it so great? Because it's extremely simple to use, extremely user-friendly. You are learning the game, you're playing the game, a character has an effect that you do not know, it's super easy to locate where that effect is, the index is very complete, learn the effect, go back, to play. It's so much better than what you have in so many other rule manuals, where you have all the minutiae, all the little effects, all the rules and sub-rules buried somewhere in the manual, and you're like, I remember this probably was around the section about combat, could be about the other section. Here. Bam. I really like this. I think it makes it much easier to get into the game, and I hope that this format or this type of rules reference is something that we will see in future games by Fantasy Flights, or hey, by other publishers too. Conclusions in a nutshell. Did I like the game? Yes. Did I love the game? No. Would you like it? Maybe. Let me elaborate on that, and maybe you'll be able to figure out whether or not this is a game for you. This is a fine game. This is a perfectly fine game. You move, you attack, you fire, you defend, you have game effects. This game is reminiscent of Descent. It is, to an extent, really Descent in space with a Star Wars theme. And I like Descent. I like the mechanics. I like the effects. I like the art. I like the components. This game has all of the good things that I like in Descent. The action is interesting. The choices are sometimes obvious, but not necessarily. Sometimes the game does race to moments of pretty interesting tactical tension. So why do I just like it, and why don't I love it? Because it has all of the good things that I like in Descent, and maybe not much else. Ooh, I already know some people are getting mad, so give me a moment. Yes, there are differences. I know you're already typing, Marco, you're overlooking all the great differences that this game has. Yes, this game has differences. Don't start listing them to me. I know there are differences. To me, however, those differences are not that huge when it comes to the general feel, the general flow, the general experience. The campaign is different, the setting is different, the characters are different, but when it comes to making the choices, moving, attacking, resolving combat, this game is thematically very different, but from the point of view of the experience, to me, is not different enough to really make me think, oh my gosh, this is such a huge thing, this is such a variant that reinvents the wheel. It makes the wheel spin at a different speed in slightly different ways, but it's very similar. To me, it's very similar when it comes to the tactical combat. Is that a bad thing? Not at all. Suppose that you really like Star Wars, then I see how this game probably will be more appealing to you than Descent, because you may have a strong emotional connection with Star Wars. You grew up with that franchise. Your dad brought you to see the movies. You're a big fan of them. It warms your heart to be able to play this or that character, to follow the campaigns, to follow the missions. Whereas Descent, it may feel like more of a generic fantasy setting, more than, say, if you're playing a game about Star Wars or Game of Thrones or Lord of the Rings, that connection may not be there. So for some, this would be highly preferable to Descent. For some, this will be Descent killer. To me, it is not. To me, I personally prefer fantasy more than sci-fi. The core ideas, the core personality, to me is similar enough that if you have to choose one, if you want to purchase only one, it comes down to a matter of personal preference. If you prefer fantasy, then Descent. If you prefer Imperial Assault, then Imperial Assault. The differences, while existing, are not enough to me to make me think you need both. You totally, absolutely need both. Of course, do you need dessert? Do you need a dice tower? Do you need the games? It's a hobby, so of course we do our hobby with a component, sometimes huge one, of self-indulgence. If you want both, that's perfectly fine. If you have to choose one, really, to me, it comes to a matter of personal preference. So if I had to choose between the two, had I known more about Imperial Assaults, maybe instead of purchasing this one, I would have purchased another set of Descent. As is, I'm still going to keep it. I'm still going to keep it because maybe there will be a friend that doesn't really get excited about fantasy, and I can play the skirmish game. The skirmish game is perfectly fun per se. Fun, fine, I like the effects, I like the cards. It works. It's a nice skirmish game. I just wonder if really needed this big of a box for a skirmish game, which is not necessarily all that different than what you would have if you set up Descent and you played two players with a team of heroes and a team of monsters, and you just try to slaughter each other and you add some other flavor. Yes, here the skirmish game is not just about killing the opponent, it's about performing things on the board. There are extra effects, extra things to do, but at the core it is a skirmish game. It is called that way for a reason, I believe. So if you like one theme, fantasy or Star Wars better, you have to choose, then I think theme more than any other consideration should be the main factor in deciding whether or not this is a game for you. It's a fine game, as I said, it's a fine game. It's just that between the two, to me, the other option is more appealing. If I had to start a campaign with missions that are interlocked, that with characters that progress and grow and find new upgrades and new rewards and new items and become more powerful, and I see them growing, would I play Descent or Imperial Assault? I play Shadows of Brimstone. Actually, Shadows of Brimstone to me is the killer of all of these, because Shadows of Brimstone has all of the good things that Descent and Imperial Assault have. Tactical combat, fun theme, great art, great components, a lot of interesting effects, and it is fully cooperative. And yes, you can have the progression. Yes, your characters travel to places from mission to mission, experience different things, grow over time, acquire new abilities, new things happen to them. And the theme of Shadows of Brimstone also is very interesting. It's a Lovecraftian theme set in the old American West, and it is also very well implemented. So which one between Imperial Assault and Descent? Shadows of Brimstone, probably. If you do want to have the fantasy option or the Imperial Assault or the sci-fi / Star Wars option, then go for the game that implements that option. In a certain sense, this review is not for Star Wars fans, because for the really hardcore fans, probably they're not even watching this review. They already have the game. They already pre-ordered it 10 years ago. The point is, if you love Star Wars and you just love to see the theme come alive through components and mechanics, this game is excellent. This game does precisely that. I think this game does manage to capture the spirit and the story of the movies, of the franchise in general. But that is not a huge priority for all gamers, and is not a huge priority for me. So to me, this is a perfectly fine game. This is a good product, a very good product. I just be careful about before I just recommend, oh, everybody should buy it. I'd say think about it as a little bit of a branching tree of decisions. You like this, then it's okay. Are you okay with the Overlord situation and Star Wars is a must for you? Then this game. Otherwise, at least to me, Descent or Shadows of Brimstone are equally respectable options. And personally, I think that in the future, I will tend to play a campaign of Shadows of Brimstone before I play a campaign of Imperial Assault or even a campaign of Descent. Just because of the advantages that system has over this game and the general Descent system.